Good evening. Welcome to our midweek Bible study at the North Jackson Church of Christ. If you're visiting with us, we're so glad to have you. Please fill out the blue card in the pew in front of you. And members, fill out the white card or mark in the Lightpost app. To start before our Devo this evening, we'll be singing number 821. 821. Oh, thou blessed Rock of Ages, trusting now, dear Lord, in thee. Keep me till my journey's ended, till thy blessed face I see. Hide me, O blessed Rock of Ages, till thy blessed face I see. When a storm around me rages, Rock of Ages, hide thou me. Keep me when the storm clouds gather, till the sun comes shining through. Keep me till my work is over, till thy blessed this world adieu. Hide me, O blessed Rock of Ages, till thy blessed face I see. When the storm around me rages, Rock of Ages, hide thou me. When my journey is completed, and there's no more work to do, Savior, guide my weary spirit, happy land beyond the blue. Hide me, O blessed Rock of Ages, till thy blessed face I see. When the storm around me rages, Rock of Ages, hide thou me.
There was an insurance company I used to do business with when I lived in another state, and they still send me a birthday card every October. It's been years and years since I did any business with them, but you know, once you're on a mailing list, you don't get off of it for a while. So they send me a birthday card every October, and just, I guess, to make me feel good, they list a lot of things that were happening the year I was born, in 1983. And those things make me feel older and older every year because it obviously gets more and more out of date. I wrote down some of these types of things. In 1983, Pac-Man and Centipede were bringing kids to the mall arcades. Remember the mall arcades? Milk was $1.35 a gallon, and monthly rent averaged $335. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And a gallon of gas was average 96 cents. The internet officially began that year. I don't know what that involved, maybe two computers that were sending a signal to each other, but that's when it officially began. The first mobile cellular telephone call took place, and the release of the first CD player in the United States was that year. So that has been a long time. And there is a lot of advantage in many things that are new. We like to have a new car or some new clothes or some new things around the house. We like new things. I guess everybody's that way. But then, in some cases, what's new is not necessarily better. In fact, in Acts 17:21, we read about the Athenian philosophers, and it was said that they spent all day just telling or hearing something new. And the Apostle Paul had something new to tell them, but it was about a God that had always been around and they had just ignored. In fact, the blessing of the gospel is about 2,000 years old. The first full gospel sermon after the resurrection of Christ was preached right about 2,000 years ago, and the message has not changed. In Lamentation 3:23, we read that the blessings of God are new every morning. But there can be a brand new blessing in someone's life due to a message that is ancient. In Jeremiah 6:16, we read that we should ask for the old paths. That message was specifically for the Israelites who ignored the law of Moses. They may have thought, well, this was given about 1,000 years ago, so this is an old message. But Jeremiah says you should ask for it because you will find rest for your souls, he says, in the gospel, in the law of Moses. Well, for us, the gospel is 2,000 years old, but it is the way you find rest for your souls. The answer to life's pressing questions, the answer to man's deepest needs and longings, the opportunity to have peace in your heart and purpose in your life and meaning in your existence all come from a message that is now about 2,000 years old. But just because it's old, that doesn't mean it's out of date. Those are two separate matters. So we must not simply look for things that are new, but look for the things that are right. There was a time when the gospel was brand new. It's not that way today. It may seem old-fashioned to some people, but it has never been improved upon. We don't have anything better than the message of the New Testament with which to appeal to the world. There's never been any newer version of it or any update to it. It's exactly the same as it was preached in the first century. So when we offer it to you tonight, when we extend the Lord's invitation, you can do exactly what people have been doing for all of these 2,000 years in obedience to God. The message, the invitation is exactly the same. Repent, confess, be baptized for the remission of your sins, and then live faithfully and go home and be with God after this life is over. And you will be richly rewarded, not just in the afterlife, but by having what Jesus called the abundant life right here and right now. John 10 and verse 10. Do you need to become right with God in one way or another, by becoming a Christian or by becoming faithful as a Christian again? Or perhaps you need the prayers or the assistance of the church in some way. If we can do anything to help you be right with God, come right now as together we stand and while we sing.
Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for me. See on the portals he's waiting and watching, watching for you and for me. has mercy and pardon, pardon for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, oh sinner, come home.
Good evening. Welcome to the midweek Bible study here at the North Jackson Church of Christ. As always, if you're visiting with us, we count you as our honored guest and invite you back each and every opportunity that you have to be with us. We'd love to have a record of everyone's attendance. Visitors, if you fill out one of the blue attendance cards. Members, if you fill out either a white card or the Light Post app, our ushers are coming down now to collect those cards. We have a couple families that we want to continue to remember in prayer. The first off here, the Boggs family, we want to offer our love and deepest sympathy to Leonard and Carletta Boggs in the death of Carletta's brother, Gary McDonald, on Saturday, May the 3rd. He was also the uncle of David Boggs. Visitation will be from 11 a.m. until the time of the funeral at 1 p.m. this Friday, May the 9th, at the McDaniel Funeral Home in Kennett, Missouri. And then we also want to offer our love and sympathy to Kay Hockett and all of her family in the sudden passing of her daughter-in-law, Ray Hockett, Monday evening in Memphis. Ray was the wife of former North Jackson member Jason Hockett. Arrangements at this time are incomplete. As far as church events go, I want to continue to remind everyone to check the bulletin board as well as the weekly bulletin that comes out for any upcoming church activity or youth event. And then finally, the 30 and 40-something, as well as their families, have a fiesta at the home of Seth and Diane York this Saturday, May the 10th. For more details, please see the foyer bulletin board and sign up by this evening if you plan to attend. If there are no other announcements, we will have a closing prayer led by Brother Shelby Tucci, and then a dismissal song again by Nathan. Would you please be standing?
Will you pray with me, please? Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time. Thank you for giving us opportunity to gather together as a family, to encourage one another in our weekly study. Give us the patience and understanding to hear the words that will be taught to us this evening. Let us open our hearts and receive it, and let us all encourage each other through this service, through the classes, to give us strength to go out into the world and be those shining examples and the shining light to our coworkers, our friends, and family. Be with those who have lost loved ones, and we pray for their comfort during difficult times. And we also want to pray on behalf of those who are sick, not only physically, but spiritually as well. Just know that your guidance and your overwhelming love is always present. Again, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to worship you. In your Son's most precious name, amen.
There's a call comes ringing o'er the restless waves. Send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light. The blessed gospel light, let it shine. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore. You're dismissed to your classes.
Okay, think we're ready to go. Let's look at Joshua chapter 14, and we'll see if we can do 14 and 15 tonight and make good progress toward finishing up Joshua sometime this summer. That will be our goal. That sounds kind of silly, but that's the speed at which we go. It's not very fast, and that's just how I like to do it, but I think it's worth taking some time to pause and be leisurely and discuss it together and ask whatever questions, make whatever comments we want to. Okay, let's have our quiz. That also takes a little time, but I think that's worth it. It kind of gets our minds in gear, reminds us where we are in the book, and helps us to remember what we studied last time. I know it's been 2 weeks because we had the gospel meeting, so that just means you'll have to think back extra hard. I think you can do it. Number 1, which tribes received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan? Remember, the east side is the side they crossed over from to get to the promised land. So which tribes received their inheritance over there? You got it. Reuben and Gad and the half of Manasseh. Okay, great. Number 2, the Israelites took the land of what 2 kings on the east side of the Jordan? And this was back in the days of Moses when these kings were defeated. And what 2 kings were those? Og? Sihon. Good. Sihon and Og. Excellent. Number 3, multiple choice. How many defeated kings are listed in Joshua 12, verses 7 to 24? The list of the kings they defeated. Is it 31, 45, 22, or 15? I hear 31. Is everybody okay with that? Say again. You second that. That's correct. And that's not even because I counted. I didn't even count them. It just says 31 kings in all. And so you don't even have to count. You can just see what it says. Number 4, Levi, true or false? Levi received a specific area of land just as the other tribes did. False. And why would that be false? That's right. And their inheritance was the Lord himself. That's what it says. Because they ate of the sacrifices, and they had towns to live in, but they did not have a specific tribal allotment like the other tribes did. Okay, number 5, true or false? The division of the land, and these are my words, but this is summarizing what we talked about. The division of the land is best described as spiritual and practical, not political. Is that true or false? True? Yes. It's not based on who was socially perceived to have the most clout or who could buy their way into having the preferred allotment. No, it was done according to God's expectation, and as we're going to see, it was also done with respect to Jacob's prophecy in Genesis 49, where he predicted that Judah would have the preeminence as they do here. So it's practical in the sense that the families got the land they needed, and it's also spiritual in the sense that it followed God's prescription, as it was determined by Lot. The order in which they would receive their land was determined by Lot, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, here's our plan of study. We're covering Judah and Caleb specifically. Remember, Caleb was the representative of Judah in the 12 spies who originally went and looked at the land. And which 2 spies were faithful, who brought a good report? Right, Joshua and Caleb. So they're the 2 who remain. And Caleb was promised a certain territory by Moses. And so his allotment comes. He reminds everybody that Moses had promised this to him, and he wants to go take this land. And that's not a purely selfish thing. I mean, he did want the land that Moses promised, but it's also that he was going to go and help out by defeating the people who lived in the land, who still needed to be defeated. So he's not only making a claim, he's also volunteering for service. So you can look at it as a noble thing. It was a noble thing. And then Ephraim and Manasseh will be next week, and then a bunch of other tribes in chapters 18 and 19, and then the cities of refuge, which is a wonderful comparison to our refuge in Christ. That's a foreshadowing of the church, those cities of refuge. So we'll look forward to seeing those 6 cities which were scattered around the whole territory so that you were never more than 20 miles away from a city of refuge, which means that if you're an able-bodied person, it was theoretically possible for you to get to a city of refuge within about a day. So if you accidentally killed somebody in the morning, you could be at a city of refuge by the evening so that your life would not be taken. And we'll get into all the details of that when we get to chapter 20. So that's our plan for May. We'll make a lot of progress, I hope. Here's a map of the allotment of the 12 tribes, and if you have a study Bible or a book of Bible maps or a book on Bible geography, this might be the first map they show you, because this is sort of fundamental to all of biblical history once you get into the era of Abraham and beyond, because this was the land that Abraham was promised as an inheritance for his people. And you can see, if you could look closer on the map, and you can have these slides, if you just give me your email address, I'll make sure you get access to all the slides. But this will show you how it was divided up. Okay? This is the tomb of the patriarchs, the so-called tomb of the patriarchs. Now, if you've been over there to Palestine, and some of you may have, it's a very impressive building that was actually constructed by Herod, but it's thought to be on top of the tomb where Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah are buried. And this is also the land where Caleb got his inheritance at Hebron. So you can walk around in there, although you can't get down to where they actually thought they're buried. But then here's an ancient wall with very large stones at Hebron. This dates to the time when Caleb took this territory. They're very big stones, many of them, which is an indication that possibly very big people moved them around. And that would fit with the description of the Anakim. Anak means giant. And so the Anakim were very large people who lived in that region and were driven out by the Israelites. Okay? And then there is a stepped structure which goes down into a washing area, a mikveh, a place where they could do ceremonial cleansing. And this was sort of a trademark of Israelite areas because they wanted to be ceremonially clean. And if you read in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Numbers, very often things would happen in their lives where they had to get cleansed before they could be accepted back among the people, where they could be considered clean. And so that was one of those places has been discovered at Hebron. Okay, before we get into the chapter, let me just do a little review of some notes about how this land was distributed. And there are a variety of spiritual lessons that come up. You might say, well, why do we care how the land was distributed? We're not in those tribes. We need to remember that God was orderly about this, and that the people who inherited the land at the time knew all of the land markers that we're talking about, or the ones that were relevant to them. So this shows the concreteness of this eyewitness testimony about how this land was and how it was divided. This is not a fairy tale. This is something where the people who read this originally would say, yep, that's my territory. That's where the borders are. That's how it goes. The larger tribe received their portion first, according to the casting of lots, as is prescribed in Numbers 33:54. And this means that Caleb's lot had to come first. Think about that. Why would Caleb's lot have to come first? It's not just because he thought of himself as a big shot. It was because if God had promised a certain plot of land to Caleb, then Caleb and Judah would necessarily have to come first if Caleb was going to live in Judah. Furthermore, Judah had the preeminence. Which son was Judah in the order of Jacob? Right, he was number 4. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Well, why didn't Reuben get to be the preeminent son? Why didn't he get the greatest blessing from Jacob? Don't look at the screen. It's up on the screen, sorry. If you looked at the screen and you want to tell me, that's okay. Okay, well, he had dishonored his father because he had taken the father's concubine, who was given to him in order to produce offspring by his wife Rachel. Bilhah was Rachel's, correct? Someone double check me on that, but I believe so. And then why not Simeon and Levi? Well, they slaughtered the Shechemites against the will of Jacob. They carried on a deception, a plot to slaughter a whole group of people in this community after the rape of their sister Dinah. And although the rape certainly was wrong, two wrongs don't make a right. And slaughtering an entire community for what one person had done, and that person deserved to die, but not everybody else, on the basis of subterfuge. So you can read about that in Genesis 34. It's one of the most shameful accounts of anybody in the whole Bible, what they did to those people. But notice that when you get to Genesis 49 and Jacob is giving the blessings, which are, some of them are sort of like cursings. That's a very interesting chapter, but we don't have time to go through all of Genesis 49 and how Jacob addressed his various sons. But let me just summarize it and say it all checks out. Everything that Jacob forecasted about his 12 sons came true, including the way this land was divided up. Judah, well, let's just look at Genesis 49:10 as a way of getting the most important bit for our purposes. Okay. Judah, verse 9 and 10. Judah is a lion's whelp. We'll actually back up to verse 8. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who dares rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Jesus, of course, is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and here we have a prediction that the scepter would not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes. That may sound very mysterious, but a scepter refers to political sovereignty. It refers to a rulership. So there's some sense in which rulership would not be separated from Judah until this figure Shiloh comes. Well, Shiloh means one of two things, and I don't think we're really too sure which one is right. It may mean peace, so a ruler of peace, and that causes you to think of Isaiah 9:6 about Jesus being the Prince of Peace. But then the other option is his to whom it belongs. So the person who has the scepter, who rightfully lays claim to it. Either one of those would be a fitting description of Christ. And then in what sense did the scepter not depart from Judah until Jesus came? Well, it wasn't until the end of the reign of Herod the Great when the Romans started ruling Judea with a governor like Pilate, when they appointed an outsider to reign over that territory. So it's quite true that the scepter never did depart from Judah until Jesus had come. And when did Herod the Great die? Well, he died on the year when Jesus was born, or right thereafter. I mean, everybody says Herod died in 4 BCE. And he had to kill all those babies in Bethlehem. So that's a whole different study about the dating of the birth of Jesus, but it was 5 to 4 BCE. He died shortly after the birth of Jesus. And so the scepter did not depart from Judah until Shiloh had come. And that means that at the division of the land, here's how it circles back to Joshua. Judah has to go first. And Judah gets more description of its territories. That shows that in the mind of the author, who is almost certainly Joshua, although he may have had help from Eliezer the priest or someone like that who's an official. Remember, it's an anonymous book, but it's somebody who is very well versed in what's going on and who is alive at the time. So Joshua, or the author of this, thinks of Judah as being so much more important than other tribes that when it comes to breaking down what territory they got, more attention is given to Judah than the others. But that fits because Judah is the royal tribe. And that's not just in the case of Jesus as the ultimate king of Israel and the Lord of the universe, but also, where did David come from? David was the tribe of Judah also, wasn't he? And he was the great king of the Old Testament. He's the paradigmatic king of all Hebrew history, the top one. Okay, any question or comment about that before we look at a few more notes here? Notice that in Genesis 48:5, Jacob adopted Ephraim and Manasseh. That's critical because that gives you 12 lots of land for the people to inherit. Because, remember, Levi does not get a portion. However, Joseph gets 2 portions because Ephraim and Manasseh are both sons in the eyes of Jacob just as surely as any of the others are. Genesis 48:5. And then also a note on the authenticity of the book. I'm just going through some things that come to my mind as I read these passages. So it may seem random, but I think it's setting the stage for it before we read it. Remember that Joshua knew this oath. When Caleb says to Joshua, listen, Moses promised to give me this land. There's no discussion about it. There's no, really? Did Moses say something about that? Or is this documented anywhere? No, Joshua knew it. And so it was totally appropriate. Everybody understood this. Kenaz is important because Caleb is a Kenizzite. So that is thought to be a descendant of Kenaz, who's mentioned in Genesis 36:15. But Kenaz is a descendant of Esau. He's one of the sons of Esau. So isn't that interesting? So this is in a tribe of people who have apparently some Edomite origin. And that would speak to God blessing the Edomites also, as God made many blessings toward both Jacob and Esau. The Edomites were promised that they would be a great nation, and they were for a number of years. They finally just basically went out of existence when Rome conquered that territory. But even then, the Herodian bloodline is Edomite. And then they did a lot of bad things. They opposed Israel when the Babylonians took over Jerusalem. They shouted in favor of what the Babylonians were doing. So the Edomites were bad, but in general, but God blessed them in many ways. And there's a connection here with Kenaz. Remember that Joshua had already killed the king of Hebron in chapter 10. The king of Hebron joined this anti-Gibeonite coalition of 5 kings, the battle of the 5 kings. Do y'all remember when we talked about that? Okay, so the Hebron king named, what was his name? Hoham? I believe it's Hoham. Okay, Hoham had joined up with the anti-Gibeonite coalition, and he had already been killed. But apparently, although the people of Hebron had been driven out, they had come back in the intervening time. The Anakim had been driven to areas of Philistia, according to chapter 11, which we read, but Caleb still got to fight them. So apparently they had come back. Hebron was on a sloping hill, which overlooks a fertile valley, which makes it a difficult target if you're trying to fight uphill and the people up at the top are throwing things at you and shooting arrows at you, hurling rocks on your head. Then it's a very difficult battle to fight. But Caleb was up for it. And they were regarded as giants, as I mentioned a minute ago. Remember when the Israelites first sent the 12 tribes, the faithless tribes complained because they said, these people are what? These people are giants, so we can't fight against them. And Caleb and Joshua said, no, we're well able to take it, not because we're taller than they are, not because we have better weaponry, but because the Lord promised to give us the land. So we will take God up on his offer and believe God, trust God. Well, now these giants are still there, and Caleb still has the same attitude, that I'm able to take this hill country. He says, give me this mountain or give me this hill country and let me drive these people out. Apparently, Jerusalem had remained independent and did so until the time of David when he conquered it and made it his capital. I say that because you're going to see the borders of Judah. And everybody who's an Old Testament Bible student knows that Judah is part of the tribe of, Jerusalem is part of the tribe of Judah. The capital of the southern kingdom after the tribes divided is in Judah. It's the predominant tribe. Is Judah or Benjamin more important? It's Judah, and Jerusalem is there. But here, it's still independent. The Jebusites were still there, and it would be in the reign of David before Jerusalem got taken, and David would make it his capital. That's one of the primary accomplishments of the reign of David. And I have some notes on casting lots. I may skip over the nitty-gritty on that, but I just want to tell you that casting of lots was one way in which God communicated his will. And we have no indication that we could cast lots now, that we could roll some dice and find an answer from God, or that we could throw some sticks on the ground and see what God's answer was. But God communicated in a variety of ways, Hebrews 1:1 tells us. And the casting of lots was one of those ways. And the Urim and the Thummim that were on the breastplate of the high priest, that was another way in which you could get a yes or no answer from God about specific matters. And this just is God's grace that he did not leave the people to make up their own decisions about a lot of things, because they had much less complete revelation than we have today. But casting of lots is the way in which the ordering of the distribution of the land was determined. Now, let's read chapter 14 together. That's all background, but does anybody have any question or comment about the background before we get into the reading? Okay. Now, these are the territories which the sons of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the households of the tribes of the sons of Israel apportioned to them for an inheritance. Notice all that involvement. It's not unilateral on the part of Joshua, but the leaders of the people are all involved in this. And that's smart, isn't it? Just from a practical standpoint, that nobody's thinking, well, Joshua is hiding out in a room just making arbitrary judgments about where we're going to live. No, the heads of the households were involved. So it was a patriarchal group determination, so that when the patriarch came home to everybody else and said, okay, here's where we're going to live, if they didn't like the place that they had been assigned, it wouldn't be blamed on Joshua, because it was a group determination. By the lot, verse 2, by the lot of their inheritance, as the Lord commanded through Moses, for the 9 tribes and the half tribe. So now we're looking at the 9.5 tribes on the west of the Jordan. For Moses had given the inheritance of the 2 tribes and the half tribe beyond the Jordan. But he did not give an inheritance to the Levites among them, for the sons of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and they did not give a portion to the Levites in the land except cities to live in, with their pasture lands for their livestock and for their property. Thus the sons of Israel did just as the Lord had commanded Moses, and they divided the land. Then the sons of Judah drew near to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, said to him, You know the word which the Lord spoke to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea. That's where the Israelites were when they sent the 12 spies in back in Numbers 13. So he's referring to that instance. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought word back to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt with fear. But I followed the Lord my God fully. So Moses swore on that day, saying, Surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and to your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God fully. Now behold, the Lord has let me live, just as he spoke these 45 years, from the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses when Israel walked in the wilderness, and now behold, I am 85 years old today. Just pause there and notice this is the most important verse for dating the length of time that it took the Israelites to take this territory. It's usually said that it took them 5 to 7 years, and it's based on this verse. Now behold, let's see, that's verse 10. Now verse 11. I am still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so my strength is now for war and for going out and coming in. Now then, give me this hill country about which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day that Anakim were there with great fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out as the Lord has spoken. So Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for an inheritance. Therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, until this day, because he followed the Lord God of Israel fully. Now the name of Hebron was formerly Kiriath Arba, for Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. Then the land had rest from war. Okay? Kiriath just means city, so it's city of Arba. I think it would be good for us to just pause a minute and talk about Caleb's character. What do you notice about him? Surely this is a passage you've come across and studied, and he's a courageous person. He takes the Lord at his word. He's not fearful. So what jumps out to you? I would like to let you make comments about this brave man who did such a good job here. That's certainly true. So he was 85 years old, which by the time we're in the age of Joshua, didn't Joshua live to be 110? I'm pretty sure that was Joshua's age when he died. So it is an old man. In some parts of the Old Testament earlier, in the book of Genesis, 85 would be a spring chicken, but not here. So you're right. His strength is not abated. And that's right, nor has his faith been abated. That's right. He was still as confident as he ever was that God would do it. Good. What does his attitude teach us about our expectation to go to heaven? We keep saying in this class that the main thing to remember about the book of Joshua is that the conquest represents our going to heaven, that our promised land is heaven. So there are a lot of things about the Israelites taking the land that teach us about our going to heaven. And here, Caleb has full expectation that this is owed to him and it's coming to him. Not because he warranted it, not because he earned it, but because God promised it. And so he has expectation. It is coming to him. And that should be our attitude about going to heaven, right? Remember in Matthew 19, toward the end of the chapter, the apostles asked Jesus, they said, I'll get to you in just a second. The apostles asked Jesus, see, we have left everything. What shall there be for us? And you might think, well, that's an impertinent question. Jesus would probably respond by saying, don't ask about what's coming to you. Ask not what can be done for you. Ask what you can do for other people. Is that what Jesus said? No, he said, you will sit on 12 thrones and you will rule the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's talking about apostolic authority and their ultimate glorification in heaven. But in other words, he told them about a reward. And so we should not think that it's wrong for us to look at heaven as a reward that's coming to us. And Caleb, it seems, looked at his claim on this land as being something that was rightfully his, and he was going to lay claim to it. And that's our expectation about heaven. It is coming to us, and it is rightfully ours. Not because we're so good, but because Jesus is so good, and he said we can have it. It's very much like with children, and we're God's children, so there are a lot of analogies with children that are apropos. If mom or dad has said you can have something, then you better believe kids are going to lay claim to it. How many times do we hear a child say, Dad said I could have it, or Mom said I could have it? And that's sort of the same attitude that we have on a much more mature scale. We say, I'm betting my whole life on this. I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. And I am assured by God in heaven that I can have this. And that's not impertinent. That's not selfish. That's saying I believe God. That's all it is. It's saying I believe God. Okay? And I don't mean betting in a bad sense. So we've preached on that before. Okay, yes, sir. In the back. Right. That's right. The message is that they trusted that God's word would come true. That was their attitude when the 12 spies originally went in. They had no reason to think that militarily they could take the land, but they had every reason to think that God would do what he said. And we need to have that same conviction. Okay, who else? Yes. Right? Mm-hmm. He said, I can take it, but he still did have to do it. And did you know he needed help? We're about to see him get help from his future son-in-law. In fact, that's how he becomes his son-in-law, is by helping him in driving out these bad guys. And Othniel is going to become one of the judges. In Judges 3, the son-in-law of Caleb is one of the great deliverers of the people in the book of Judges. So there's a mentorship that happens where this judge could look back on what Caleb had taught him and say, well, I can deliver the people because I already drove out the Anakim out of their stronghold up on the mountains. So there's a lot to be said for Caleb both believing that he could do it and enlisting younger help. That's good. We need to think about replacing ourselves. And who's going to be doing a job for the Lord that I'm doing now? Each of us should ask ourselves, what about our children, our grandchildren, younger people over whom we have influence? So there's a good example there. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. There may be an indication in the Hebrew that, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, so there may be a way to attach it to this possibility that they're still in the fortified cities.
And I'm almost taking it that way because I don't know if my grammar very much, but that semicolon, they got a semicolon after that, so I'm almost thinking that makes it revert back to that.
So where is the perhaps or if so in your translation? Is it, read that part of the verse.
Well, it just says, in that day how the Anakims were there and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be the Lord will be with me. If so be the Lord will be with me.
Mm.
Then I shall be able to drive them out of the way.
Right.
It's a little confusing.
Right. Okay. New American Standard says, you heard on that day that the Anakim were there with great fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me and I will drive them out as the Lord has spoken. Right. Perhaps makes you kind of think maybe there's doubt, but contextually that doesn't make sense because he's so confident. So I think it's better to say it's either that perhaps they're still there. If they're still there, I'm driving them out. Or it could be taken as this is just kind of a, what's that part of speech? Not subjunctive mood, where you're saying this is something that could happen in the future. But it's not an expression of doubt. Right. But he's very confident that the Lord is going to give him this land. So however you read it, I don't think it can be taken as an expression of doubt. Okay. Now let's look at chapter 15 and see if y'all are okay with moving on, because Caleb's story is not finished. So if you have something else to say about him, we can still say it as we go. The borders of Judah are listed. That's kind of a lengthy reading, but our tradition is to read every verse. So let's read this part, verses 1 to 12. Now the lot for the tribe of the sons of Judah, according to their families, reached the border of Edom, southward to the wilderness of Zin at the extreme south. Their south border was from the lower end of the Salt Sea, from the bay that turns to the south. Then it proceeded southward to the ascent of Akrabim and continued to Zin. It went up by the south of Kadesh Barnea and continued to Hezron, and went up to Adar and turned about to Karka. It continued to Asmon and proceeded to the brook of Egypt, and the border ended at the sea. This shall be your south border. The east border was the Salt Sea as far as the mouth of the Jordan, and the border of the north side was from the bay of the sea at the mouth of the Jordan. Then the border went up to Beth Hoglah and continued on the north of Beth Arabah, and the border went up to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. The border went up to Debir from the valley of Achor, and turned northward toward Gilgal, which is opposite the ascent of Adummim, which is on the south of the valley. And the border continued to the waters of En-Shemesh, and it ended at En-Rogel. Then the border went up the valley of Ben-Hinnom to the slope of the Jebusite on the south, that is Jerusalem. And the border went up to the top of the mountain, which is before the valley of Hinnom, to the west, which is at the end of the valley of Rephaim, toward the north. From the top of the mountain, the border curved to the spring of the waters of Nephtoah, and proceeded to the cities of Mount Ephron. Then the border curved to Baalah, that is Kiriath Jearim. The border turned about from Baalah westward to Mount Seir, and continued to the slope of Mount Jearim on the north, that is Chesalon, and went down to Beth Shemesh, and continued through Timnah. The border proceeded to the east side of Ekron northward. Then the border curved to Shikharon and continued to Mount Baalah and proceeded to Jabneel, and the border ended at the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. The west border was at the Great Sea, even its coastline. This is the border around the sons of Judah according to their families. Now he gave to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, a portion among the sons of Judah, according to the command of the Lord to Joshua, namely Kiriath Arba, Arba being the father of Anak, that is Hebron. And Caleb drove out from there the three sons of Anak, Shishai and Ahiman and Talmai, the children of Anak. Then he went up from there against the inhabitants of Debir. Now the name of Debir formerly was Kiriath Sepher. And Caleb said, the one who attacks Kiriath Sepher and captures it, I will give him Aisha, my daughter, as a wife. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, captured it. So he gave him Aisha, his daughter, as a wife. It came about that when she came to him, she persuaded him to ask her father for a field. So she alighted from the donkey, and Caleb said to her, what do you want? Then she said, give me a blessing, since you have given me the land of the Negev, or a desert area, not down in the Negev proper, like you see on the map where it says the Negev. This is probably a generic usage of the word Negev, so a desert area. Give me also springs of water. So he gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. He was a softy as a dad, wasn't he? Well, you'd probably do that for your daughter too. She said, can you give me a spring? I'll give you 2 springs. That's nice. That's nice, isn't it? Okay. I thought you would say, oh yeah, that's nice. Okay, it's nice. Now the cities at the extremity of the tribe of the sons of Judah, Toward the border of Edom in the south were Kabzeel and Eder and Jagar and Kenna and Dimona and Adada and Kadesh and Hazor and Ithnan, Ziph and Telem and Bealoth and Hazor Hadatah and Kiriath Hezron, that is Hazor, Amam and Shema and Moladah and Hazar-Gadah and Heshmon and Beth Pelet and Hashar Shual and Beersheba and Biziathiah and Baalah and Eam and Ezem and Eltadad and Chesel and Hormah and Ziklag. Now, Ziklag is a very important city. Some of these jump out at you as being very important, but that is where David and his troops would later hide when they were running from Saul. And Madmanah and Sansana and Lebaoth and Shilhim and Ain and Rimmon, in all 29 cities with their villages. In the lowland, Eshtaol and Zorah and Ashna and Zanoah and Enganim, Tapua and Enam, Jarmuth and Adullam, Soko and Azekah, and Shearaim and Editham and Gedera and Gederathaim, 14 cities with their villages. Zenan and Hadashah and Migdalgad and Dilian and Mizpah and Joktheel, Lachish and Bozkath and Eglon and Caban and Lamus and Chitlish and Gederoth, Beth Dagon and Naamah and Makkedah, 16 cities with their villages. Libnah and Ether and Ashan and Iphtha and Ashna and Nezib and Keilah. Now that's an important one in the life of David too, as he was running from Saul. Akzib and Mareshah, 9 cities with their villages. Ekron with its towns and its villages. From Ekron even to the sea, all that were by the side of Ashdod with their villages. Now you're in the Philistine area, you know, when you're looking at these Ekron and Ashdod and Gaza. These are Philistine cities. Now that ought to tell you something, that they're going to have trouble with failure to drive out these people. As far as the brook of Egypt and the Great Sea, even its coastline, in the hill country, Shamer and Jatir and Soka and Dana and Kiriath Sana, that is Debir, and Anab and Eshtemoa and Anam and Goshen and Holon and Gilo, 11 cities with their villages. Arab and Duma and Eshan and Janam and Beth Tapua and Aphekah and Humta and Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, and Zyar, 9 cities with their villages. Maon, Carmel, and Ziph, and Judah, and Jezreel, and Jokdeam, and Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah, 10 cities with their villages. And remember, it was Timnah where the wife of Samson came from, the first wife, the one where he married her and then killed a bunch of her people and then they never saw each other again. Okay, 10 cities with their villages. Halhul, Bethzur, and Gedor, and Meareth, and Beth Anoth, and Eltekon, 6 cities with their villages. Kiriath Baal, that is Kiriath Jearim, and Rabbah, 2 cities with their villages. In the wilderness, Beth Araba, Middin, and Sekakah, and Nibshan, and the city of Salt, and En-Gedi, 6 cities with their villages. Now as for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the sons of Judah could not drive them out. So the Jebusites live with the sons of Judah at Jerusalem until this day. Okay, I'm about to let you go, but that phrase, until this day, is important because it shows that the person who wrote this was very familiar with how things were in Judah. This shows firsthand awareness of what was going on. And that's in chapter 14:14 as well. That phrase, until this day, occurs repeatedly in the book of Joshua. So we're thankful that we have that extra assurance that this is really accurate historically. Well, there's more to say about the story with Caleb and Othniel, so we'll try to say a little bit more about that next week and then continue on. But thanks for your good attention.